If you haven't subscribed to Case Decoded yet, hit that subscribe button right now and give this video a like, because what we are breaking down today may be the most significant development in the Nancy Guthrie investigation since the 44 seconds of doorbell camera footage that started everything. The sheriff investigating this case has gone on the record to say that investigators believe they know why the kidnapper did this. He knows the motive, and he is not telling us what it is. That statement, "We believe we know why he did this," is 5 words that change everything about how we understand where this investigation stands. 42 days after Nancy Guthrie disappeared from her home in the Catalina foothills of Tucson, Arizona. Let's establish where we are. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She is the mother of NBC Today show anchor Savannah Guthrie. She was taken from her home in the early morning hours of February 1st, 2026. A carefully planned abduction that involved a masked, armed suspect who disabled her doorbell camera, potentially jammed the neighborhood's internet connection, and left behind a trail of evidence that federal and local investigators have been working through for more than 6 weeks. As of today, no suspect has been publicly identified, no arrest has been made, and Nancy Guthrie has not been found. But the investigation has not been standing still, and the developments that have emerged in the past 48 hours, from multiple verified sources including Fox News, People magazine, ABC News, and reporter Brian Enton, paint a picture of an investigation that is simultaneously more advanced and more complicated than the public record has previously suggested. Today we are going to break down all of it. The motive statement, the new camera images, the utility box, the internet outage investigation, the DNA picture, and what all of it tells us about where this case is headed. Subscribe to Case Decoded and give this video a like. The motive statement from Sheriff Nanos is where we need to start, because it is the most consequential thing any investigator has said publicly about this case since the investigation began. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos sat down with NBC News for an interview published on March 12, 2026, 40 days into the search for Nancy Guthrie. What he said in that interview represents a significant shift in the public posture of the investigation. "We believe we know why he did this," Nanos said, "and we believe that it was targeted, but we're not 100% sure of that. Read that statement carefully, because every word in it matters. We believe we know why he did this. This is not a statement that investigators are working to establish a motive. This is a statement that investigators have already formed a belief about what the motive is. They are not searching for why. They believe they have found it." The investigation has reached a point where the evidentiary picture, the analytical work, and the investigative conclusions drawn from 6 weeks of comprehensive evidence gathering have produced a belief about the reason this crime was committed, and we believe that it was targeted. This is the second critical phrase. A targeted crime is a fundamentally different type of crime than a random one. A targeted abduction means the suspect selected Nancy Guthrie specifically, not because she happened to be available, not because her home happened to be accessible, but because something about her circumstances, her family, or her connections made her the specific intended target of this specific crime. Targeted crimes are, in some ways, more solvable than random ones, because the targeting implies a relationship, however indirect, between the victim and the perpetrator. But we're not 100% sure of that. This qualifier is important. It tells us that while investigators have strong beliefs, the evidentiary picture is not yet complete enough to move from belief to certainty. There remains analytical work to be done. There remain threads to be followed. But the direction of those threads, toward a specific motive, toward a specific targeting rationale, is already established in the investigators' minds. What Nanos did not say is equally significant. He declined to elaborate on the motive itself. When pressed, he said, "I think it's come out from day one. I think day one, we had some strong beliefs about what happened, and those beliefs haven't diminished." He added, "I'm not going to get into those theories. We have our beliefs. Everybody else has theirs." The statement that these beliefs have been present since day one is remarkable. It means that whatever the investigators believe motivated this crime, the evidence pointing toward that motivation was present at the scene on February 1st, visible in the crime scene itself, in the way the crime was committed, in the evidence left behind. The motive, in other words, is not something that investigators discovered weeks into the investigation. It is something that the crime scene itself communicated. Make sure you are subscribed to Case Decoded and have given this video a like. The implications of the motive statement connect directly to the danger warning that the sheriff issued in the same interview, and understanding the connection is essential. In the same NBC interview, Sheriff Nanos issued a warning about public safety that deserves careful attention. He said the suspect could absolutely strike again. His exact words, "Criminal minds are criminal minds. So it'd be silly to tell people, don't worry about it, you're not his target. You could be. Don't think for a minute that because it happened to the Guthrie family, you're safe. No. Keep your wits about you." This warning exists in direct tension with the motive statement. On one hand, Nanos says investigators believe the crime was targeted, that Nancy Guthrie was specifically selected. On the other hand, he warns the public not to assume they are safe because it happened to the Guthrie family. How do we reconcile these two statements? The reconciliation lies in the qualifier that Nanos attached to the targeting assessment. We're not 100% sure of that. If investigators believe the crime was targeted but are not certain, they cannot rule out the possibility that the suspect is capable of and willing to commit a similar crime against another victim. A suspect who targeted Nancy Guthrie for a specific reason might also have other potential targets. A suspect whose motivation connects to something broader than one specific victim could strike again. The public safety warning is not a contradiction of the targeting assessment. It is a responsible acknowledgement that even a targeted crime does not eliminate public risk, because the suspect who committed it is still unidentified, still at large, and still capable of further criminal action. The combination of these two statements, "We believe it was targeted and you could be at risk," tells us something important about how investigators are thinking about this suspect. They believe he had a reason for choosing Nancy. They believe that reason was specific enough to constitute targeting. But they also believe that the suspect's criminal capability and willingness to act are not limited to this one crime. The warning to keep your wits about you is the warning of a law enforcement official who is taking seriously the possibility that the person who took Nancy Guthrie has not stopped being dangerous. Subscribe to Case Decoded and give this video a like. The new camera evidence that has emerged in the past 24 hours adds another critical dimension to the investigative picture. The new camera images are a development that requires careful and precise description because the details matter enormously, and the reporting on this development has varied in its precision across different outlets. Here is what is confirmed by verified sources: Fox News, ABC News, and reporter Brian Enton, whose reporting has been consistently accurate on this case. Nancy Guthrie's home had multiple security cameras. The doorbell camera at the front door was the one that captured the masked suspect and generated the 44 seconds of footage that became the central visual evidence in the case. That camera is now missing. It was removed from its mount, and law enforcement has confirmed that the front doorbell camera itself is absent. But the home had other cameras. Cameras covering the driveway, a camera covering the backyard near the pool, a camera covering the side yard. These cameras were taken into evidence by the FBI early in the investigation. Investigators, working with Google, have now been able to recover images from these additional cameras. The images are thumbnail images, still frames captured when the cameras were triggered by motion, rather than continuous video footage. They show people at various locations around the property in the days and weeks leading up to Nancy's disappearance. Here is the critical detail that changes the investigative significance of this development. The cameras captured nothing on the night of the abduction. The period during which Nancy was taken, the early morning hours of February 1st, produced no images from the backyard, pool, and side yard cameras. The cameras were not recording during the critical window. One law enforcement source described this to ABC News as odd. That word, odd, is doing a lot of analytical work in a very small space. If the cameras were functioning in the days before the abduction, capturing thumbnail images whenever motion was detected, why did they not capture anything during the period of the abduction itself? There are several possible explanations, and investigators are reportedly drawing no conclusions yet about which one is correct. The first explanation is technical failure. Camera systems can experience intermittent outages for various reasons: power fluctuations, connectivity issues, software errors. A technical failure that coincidentally occurred on the night of the abduction would be an extraordinary coincidence, but not an impossible one. The second explanation connects directly to another confirmed investigative thread: the internet and power disruption that the neighborhood experienced around the time of Nancy's disappearance. If the suspect used a signal jammer or tampered with the area's electrical infrastructure, both of which are being investigated, the effect of that interference might have extended to the backyard and side yard cameras, as well as the front doorbell camera. A comprehensive electronic disruption of the home's camera system would explain why multiple cameras captured nothing during the abduction window. The third explanation, and the one that investigators are treating as a serious possibility given the confirmed tampering with the utility box near Nancy's home, is deliberate interference with the property's electrical or internet systems that extended beyond the front camera to affect the entire security system. Give this video a like and subscribe to Case Decoded. The utility box investigation is the thread that connects the camera blackout to the broader question of how comprehensively the suspect planned and executed this crime. The utility box near Nancy Guthrie's home showing signs of having been tampered with is a confirmed investigative development. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos confirmed in his NBC interview that investigators are looking into a possible internet or power outage the morning of Nancy's abduction. However, Nanos also stated that the vandalized utility box near the property does not constitute direct evidence, meaning that while it has been examined, investigators have not publicly confirmed that the tampering was connected to the abduction. The FBI's position on the utility box is more expansive. According to reporting from multiple outlets, the FBI has continued to investigate whether the area's electricity or internet was deliberately interfered with, an investigation that goes beyond the specific utility box to examine the broader infrastructure of the neighborhood around the time of the crime. Multiple neighbors reported to investigators that their security camera recordings from the night of Nancy's disappearance were either absent or marked as not available. This is a significant detail. If multiple homes in the neighborhood experienced the same recording gap, if cameras across the area captured nothing during the window of the abduction, that pattern is inconsistent with isolated technical failures in individual systems. A pattern of recording gaps across multiple homes points toward a cause that affected the entire neighborhood's infrastructure simultaneously. A Wi-Fi jammer or an interference with local electrical infrastructure would produce exactly this pattern. A device that disrupts wireless communications across a geographic area would affect every Wi-Fi connected camera in that area simultaneously. A disruption to the local power grid serving the neighborhood would affect every camera dependent on that power supply simultaneously. The deliberate creation of a camera blackout across a residential neighborhood is a sophisticated operational capability. It requires either access to the technical infrastructure, which is what the utility box tampering potentially represents, or access to electronic jamming equipment operating at sufficient power to affect multiple properties simultaneously. This level of operational sophistication connects to the motive statement in a way that is analytically significant. Sheriff Nanos said investigators have believed from day one that they know why this crime was committed. If the crime involved this level of technical planning and preparation, the camera tampering, the potential network-wide disruption, the equipment purchased in advance, then the motive almost certainly involved something substantial enough to justify that level of effort and risk. Subscribe to Case Decoded and hit the like button. The DNA picture adds the final layer to this week's investigative update, and it raises questions that the investigation is actively working to resolve. Sheriff Nanos confirmed in his NBC interview that investigators remain hopeful that the mixed DNA found at Nancy's home will lead them to somebody. The word mixed is forensically significant. Mixed DNA refers to a sample that contains genetic material from more than one individual, a profile that requires specialized analysis to deconvolute into its component profiles. When investigators describe the DNA at Nancy's home as mixed, they are describing a forensic challenge that is different from the analysis of a clean single-source sample. Mixed DNA analysis requires computational tools that compare the mixed profile against known reference samples to determine how many contributors are present and what each contributor's individual profile looks like. The more contributors in a mixed sample, the more complex the analysis. The confirmation that the DNA is mixed, rather than a clean single-source profile from an unknown individual, potentially explains why the DNA analysis has not yet produced an identification. A complex mixed sample requires more processing time, more sophisticated analysis, and potentially more reference samples for comparison than a straightforward single-source unknown profile. But the sheriff's statement that investigators remain hopeful the DNA will lead them to somebody is itself significant. He did not say the DNA was inconclusive in the sense of being analytically unresolvable. He said investigators are hopeful it will lead somewhere. This is the language of an investigator who believes the DNA analysis, while complex and time-consuming, is producing results that will eventually be actionable. The mixed DNA at the crime scene, combined with the accomplice theory that investigators have confirmed they are pursuing, creates an interesting analytical picture. If more than one individual was involved in Nancy's abduction, as investigators have previously suggested is possible, then a mixed DNA profile at the scene would be consistent with the physical presence of multiple individuals. Deconvoluting that mixed profile to identify each contributor could, if any contributor is in a database, produce an identification that breaks the case open. Make sure you have subscribed to Case Decoded and given this video a like. We are bringing the full picture together now, and the conclusion of this analysis tells us something important about where this investigation is headed. 6 weeks into the search for Nancy Guthrie, the investigative picture has the following confirmed elements. The sheriff believes he knows the motive and that the crime was targeted. The suspect is considered capable of striking again. New images have been recovered from cameras covering the backyard, pool, and side yard, images from the days before the abduction, but nothing from the night itself. The cameras went dark during the abduction window, which one source described as odd. The utility box near the home showed signs of tampering, and the FBI is investigating whether the area's electrical or internet infrastructure was deliberately interfered with. The mixed DNA at the scene is being analyzed, and investigators remain hopeful it will lead to an identification. And the front doorbell camera itself, the device that captured the central visual evidence, is missing. That last detail deserves one more moment of attention. The front doorbell camera is gone. It was removed from its mount. The FBI and Google were able to recover footage from back-end systems, residual data that the suspect either did not know existed or could not eliminate. But the physical device itself is absent. Someone took it. Whether that was the suspect, taking the device in an attempt to eliminate physical evidence, or law enforcement recovering it as evidence, has not been publicly confirmed. But its absence from the mount is a confirmed fact in the public record. The totality of this picture, the motive the sheriff will not reveal, the cameras that went dark at the critical moment, the utility box that shows signs of tampering, the mixed DNA that investigators are still processing, the missing camera, the accomplice theory, describes a crime that was planned at a level of sophistication that the public record is only beginning to fully document. Sheriff Nanos said from day one he had strong beliefs about what happened and why. Those beliefs have not diminished over 6 weeks. They have, if his public statements are any guide, been reinforced by the evidence gathered in the course of a comprehensive federal and local investigation involving hundreds of investigators and tens of thousands of tips. The motive is known to the investigators. The targeting is believed to be confirmed. The evidence is being processed. And somewhere in the intersection of the mixed DNA analysis, the Walmart purchase records, the Ring camera vehicle footage, the utility box investigation, and the tips generated by a $1.2 million reward, is the identification that will move this case from evidence collection to arrest. Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 42 days. She is 84 years old. She requires daily medication. Her daughter has stepped away from one of the most prominent jobs in American television to be in Tucson. Her family has offered $1 million, payable anonymously in cash, for information leading to her recovery. The investigation is not cold. It is not stalled. It is in the analytical and prosecutorial preparation phase of a major federal investigation, with a task force of homicide detectives and FBI agents working through evidence that investigators believe will eventually produce an identification and an arrest. If you have any information about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, anything at all, please contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or submit a tip at tips.fbi.gov. Tips can be submitted anonymously. The reward can be paid in cash. Every piece of information matters, and the investigation is closer to its conclusion than the public record alone can reveal. Stay subscribed to Case Decoded. Give this video a like. Share it with anyone following this investigation. We will be back the moment the next development breaks. Thank you for watching. The question of what the sheriff knows, and why he is not saying it, is one that deserves its own careful analysis. Because the decision to withhold information about a known or believed motive in a major ongoing investigation is itself an investigative and prosecutorial decision with significant implications. Law enforcement officials in active investigations withhold information about motives for several interconnected reasons. The first is operational security. If the suspect or suspects know that investigators have identified the motive, they can take steps to destroy evidence that connects to that motive, change their behavior in ways that make them harder to find, or alert potential co-conspirators to the state of the investigation. The second reason is evidentiary integrity. Information about a known or believed motive, if it becomes public, can contaminate the witness and tip pool. People who know what investigators believe the motive to be will filter the information they provide through that lens, potentially producing tips that conform to the expected narrative rather than reflecting what they actually observed. The third reason is prosecutorial strategy. In a case that will eventually result in prosecution, the motive evidence needs to be introduced at trial in a specific way, supported by the full evidentiary picture that investigators are still assembling. Premature public disclosure of the motive theory could create legal complications that affect how that evidence is presented and received in court. Sheriff Nanos' statement that the motive has been clear from day one, that the beliefs formed on February 1st have only been reinforced in the 6 weeks since, suggests that the motive evidence is embedded in the crime scene itself. Something about how the crime was committed, what was taken, what was left behind, or how the scene was arranged communicates to investigators what the perpetrator's purpose was. Subscribe to Case Decoded and give this video a like. We are going to examine what the crime scene evidence suggests about the range of possible motives, based entirely on what has been publicly confirmed. The confirmed elements of the crime scene that are consistent with the ransom theory, a theory that was established by the ransom notes sent to media organizations, include the following. The notes demanded approximately $6 million in Bitcoin. A second, more sophisticated note demanded a different cryptocurrency and included escalating threat language. The family publicly offered to negotiate and to pay. None of the ransom communications were sent directly to the family. All went to media organizations. The confirmed elements of the crime scene that are inconsistent with a straightforward ransom operation include the following. No verified proof of life has been provided in 42 days. The communications went to media organizations rather than to the people with the resources and motivation to pay. The deadline in the original note passed without apparent consequence. The level of technical preparation, potential jammer, camera disabling, utility box tampering, goes well beyond what most ransom kidnappings involve. The confirmed elements of the crime scene that are consistent with a targeted personal motive include the following. The sheriff says from day one he believed he knew why. The crime required specific knowledge of Nancy's home, her security system, her schedule, and her circumstances. Knowledge consistent with someone who had prior access to information about her specifically. The targeting assessment, even with the qualifier of uncertainty, points toward a perpetrator who selected Nancy for a reason. The confirmed elements that complicate the personal motive theory include the following. The ransom notes, while sent to media rather than family, do represent a financial demand, which is inconsistent with a purely personal crime with no financial component. The sophisticated planning involved could reflect either a professional criminal operation motivated by financial gain or an extremely determined individual with technical knowledge motivated by something personal. The most honest analytical conclusion is that the motive picture, as revealed by the public evidence, is genuinely complex, consistent with multiple possible explanations, none of which can be definitively confirmed or excluded on the basis of public information alone. The sheriff's statement that he knows the motive is a statement about what the full investigative picture reveals, information that is not in the public domain, and that is deliberately being kept from it for the operational and prosecutorial reasons described above. What we can say with confidence is this: the motive is believed to be known. The crime is believed to have been targeted. The suspect is believed to be capable of further criminal action, and the investigation is working toward the moment when the motive, the suspect's identity, and the complete evidentiary picture converge into a prosecutable case. Stay subscribed to Case Decoded. Give this video a like, share it. Contact 1-800-CALL-FBI or tips.fbi.gov with any information you have. The reward of $1.2 million is real. It can be paid anonymously in cash, and it is waiting for the person whose information brings this case to its conclusion. Nancy Guthrie's family is waiting. The investigation is working, and the sheriff, who says he knows why this happened, is not going to stop until the person responsible for it is held accountable. Thank you for watching Case Decoded. We will be back with every update as it breaks. The broader investigative context of the Nancy Guthrie case, now in its 6th week, provides important framing for understanding the significance of this week's developments. 6 weeks is a long time in a missing persons and abduction investigation. It is long enough for the initial emergency response phase to have concluded, for the comprehensive evidence collection at the primary crime scene to have been completed, and for the investigation to have transitioned fully into the analytical and prosecutorial preparation phase that characterizes long-running federal criminal cases. The task force structure that was established at the end of the 4th week, combining homicide detectives with FBI agents, is the organizational form that this phase of the investigation requires. Homicide investigators bring specific expertise in building criminal cases that will survive the scrutiny of trial. FBI agents bring federal resources, database access, and the legal authority to pursue evidence across jurisdictions and into the systems of major corporations like Google and Walmart. Together, they form the investigative unit best suited to the work of the 6th week, processing complex DNA evidence, analyzing utility infrastructure tampering, reviewing new camera images, and developing the prosecutorial framework that will eventually support charges. The FBI's operational move to Phoenix, announced in the 4th week of the investigation, reflects the same transition. The Phoenix Field Office of the FBI is the institutional home of the federal investigation into this case. Moving operational components there means that the case is being worked from the FBI's full infrastructure, with access to the analytical tools, database systems, and specialized units that are available in a major field office, but not in a field command post. The pattern of these organizational transitions, task force formation, operational move to Phoenix, return of the crime scene to the family, tells a consistent story about where the investigation is in its life cycle. Evidence collection is substantially complete. The investigative focus has shifted to analysis, synthesis, and prosecution preparation. And the developments that are emerging, the motive statement, the new camera images, the utility box investigation, the DNA processing, are the products of that analytical work, reaching the point where investigators are willing and able to discuss them publicly. Give this video a like and subscribe to Case Decoded. The surveillance picture that has emerged from the additional camera recovery is worth examining in more detail, because what the cameras did and did not capture tells us something specific about the scope of the disruption on the night of February 1st. The thumbnail images recovered from Nancy Guthrie's backyard, pool, and side yard cameras cover a period of days and weeks before the abduction. According to verified reporting from ABC News and Fox News, these images show people in the back and side yards over an unspecified period. People who, given the context, are almost certainly family members, law enforcement officers who responded after the disappearance, and potentially others whose presence at the property during the pre-abduction period is now being examined. The investigative value of these pre-abduction images is potentially significant. If the images captured individuals in the yard at times or in circumstances that require explanation, visitors whose identity or purpose is not immediately obvious, patterns of activity that suggest surveillance of the property, or any detail that connects to the investigative picture, that information could contribute to the identification of the suspect or the understanding of how the crime was planned. The cameras also captured law enforcement officers at the property in the days after the abduction, officers visible near the pool in the images, conducting the forensic examination of the grounds. These post-abduction images help establish the functionality of the cameras and confirm that they were capable of capturing images during the relevant period. The gap, the absence of any images from the night of the abduction, is what makes this development both significant and analytically challenging. If the cameras were functioning before and after, the question of why they did not function during is a question that demands an answer. The source who described this gap as odd was communicating, in the careful language of law enforcement, that this anomaly does not have an obvious innocent explanation. The range of explanations, technical failure, signal jamming, deliberate infrastructure tampering, all point toward the same analytical conclusion. Something interrupted the normal functioning of the property's security camera system at precisely the moment when those cameras would have been most valuable to investigators. Whether that interruption was deliberate or coincidental is what investigators are working to determine. The sheriff's confirmation that the internet and power disruption is being investigated combined with the FBI's examination of the tampered utility box, suggest that the deliberate interference theory is being taken seriously. The utility box investigation represents a potential thread that, if it can be forensically connected to the abduction, would transform the evidentiary picture significantly. Physical tampering with utility infrastructure is a traceable act. It requires access to the infrastructure, knowledge of how to interfere with it effectively, and physical presence at the location. Forensic evidence, fingerprints, DNA, tool marks, trace evidence from the utility box could connect a specific individual to the crime in a way that is independent of the camera footage, the Walmart purchase records, and the biological evidence from the crime scene. The FBI's continued investigation of the utility box, in the face of the Sheriff's Department's initial assessment that it was not directly connected to the case, is itself a significant detail. When the FBI pursues an investigative thread that local law enforcement has been inclined to set aside, it reflects a federal assessment that the thread has more evidentiary potential than the local assessment suggested. The FBI's broader investigative resources, analytical capabilities, and experience with complex criminal operations may have identified forensic or analytical value in the utility box evidence that was not immediately apparent. Subscribe to Case Decoded and give this video a like. We are approaching the conclusion of our analysis, and the picture that emerges is one of an investigation that knows more than it is saying and is building toward a conclusion that the public record is only beginning to reflect. The sheriff's statement about the motive connects to a detail from the very beginning of this investigation that has never been fully explained. Sheriff Nanos said early in the investigation that when his deputies arrived at Nancy Guthrie's home on February 1st, they saw something at the home that didn't sit well. He described the scene as containing things that concerned him, things that he said made him think this doesn't sit well, but he declined to elaborate. The connection between that early statement and the current motive statement is worth examining. Whatever Nanos saw at the crime scene on February 1st, whatever made him say this doesn't sit well, is the same evidence that led him to form strong beliefs about the motive from day one. The crime scene communicated something to him. That something has informed the investigative direction for 6 weeks. And now, 6 weeks later, he is willing to say publicly that those beliefs have not diminished, that the motive is believed to be known, that the crime is believed to have been targeted. This is the investigative arc of the Nancy Guthrie case as it stands in its 6th week. A crime that told its story to experienced investigators from the moment they arrived at the scene. 6 weeks of evidence collection and analysis that have reinforced rather than complicated that story. And a sheriff who is willing to tell us that he knows why, but not willing to tell us what he knows. Because telling us would compromise the investigation that is building toward the moment when knowing why leads to knowing who, and knowing who leads to an arrest. That moment is what 42 days of investigation, hundreds of investigators, tens of thousands of tips, and $1.2 million in rewards are all working toward. The motive is believed to be known. The targeting is believed to be confirmed. The evidence is being processed. And the investigation is not stopping until the complete picture, motive, suspect identity, prosecutable evidence, is assembled and ready for the legal process that Nancy Guthrie deserves. Nancy Guthrie was taken from her home 42 days ago. She is 84 years old. She is someone's mother, someone's grandmother, someone who lived in the Tucson community for decades, someone who went to church on Sunday mornings and worked at a Wendy's in her youth and raised children who love her. She deserves to be found. Her family deserves answers. And the truth about why this happened to her deserves to be known. Stay subscribed to Case Decoded. Give this video a like. Share it with everyone following this investigation. Contact 1-800-CALL-FBI or tips.fbi.gov with any information you have. The reward is $1.2 million. It can be paid anonymously in cash, and every piece of information matters. We will be back the moment the next development breaks. The sheriff knows why. And the investigation is working, every day, to build the case that turns that belief into accountability. Thank you for watching Case Decoded. There is one more dimension of this week's investigative picture that deserves careful examination. The question of what the combination of the motive statement, the camera blackout, and the utility box investigation tells us about the level of planning that went into this crime and what that level of planning implies about who might be responsible. A crime of this complexity does not happen spontaneously. It is not the product of an impulsive decision made in the moment. Every element that has been confirmed in the public record points toward extensive advance planning. The equipment purchased at Walmart, the backpack, the mask, the gloves, the dark clothing, was acquired before the night of February 1st. The knowledge of Nancy's home security system, the doorbell camera, its location, its mount, was present before the suspect approached the door. The potential jamming equipment, if used, was acquired and deployed deliberately. The approach to the utility box, if it was part of the operation, required prior knowledge of the local infrastructure. This level of planning implies several things about the person or people responsible. First, it implies that the suspect or suspects had time to plan, that this was not a crime motivated by sudden desperation or acute emotional crisis, but one that was thought through over a period of time sufficient to acquire equipment, conduct reconnaissance, and develop an operational plan. Second, it implies that the suspect had resources, financial resources to acquire the equipment, technical knowledge to understand and potentially defeat electronic security systems, and physical access to conduct whatever reconnaissance was necessary to understand the target property and its security setup. Third, it implies that the suspect had motivation sufficient to justify the risk. Planning a crime of this complexity, acquiring this level of equipment, executing this level of operational security, all of this represents a significant investment of time, resources, and criminal exposure. The motivation that drives a person to make that investment is not a casual one. It is the kind of motivation that Sheriff Nanos described as something he understood from day one, something that the crime scene itself communicated. The ransom notes that have been received by media organizations throughout this investigation add a specific financial dimension to the motivational picture: $6 million in Bitcoin. A subsequent demand in a different, more privacy-focused cryptocurrency. Financial demands of this magnitude suggest a specific financial calculation. The suspect or suspects believe that the people connected to Nancy Guthrie are capable of and willing to pay a substantial sum for her return. That calculation may or may not be accurate, but it reflects specific knowledge or beliefs about the financial capacity of the Guthrie family or their connections. The combination of targeted selection, sophisticated planning, and substantial financial demands creates a motivational profile that is more consistent with a calculated criminal enterprise than with the kind of impulsive violence that typically characterizes opportunistic crimes, whether that enterprise was motivated primarily by financial gain, by a personal grievance that the ransom demand was designed to facilitate or obscure, or by some combination of both, is what the sheriff's undisclosed motive assessment addresses. Subscribe to Case Decoded and hit the like button one more time. The final piece of this week's analysis connects the investigative threads to the reward picture and to what the next development in this case is most likely to look like. The $1.2 million reward that is currently available, $1 million from the Guthrie family, $100,000 from the FBI, $100,000 from a Tucson crime hotline, is payable anonymously and can be paid in cash. The 1,500 new tips generated since the reward was announced represent the direct impact of that incentive on the public information available to investigators. Those 1,500 tips are being processed by investigators assigned to the tip evaluation function. Each tip is assessed for credibility and relevance. The most promising ones are followed up through interviews and records checks, and the information is integrated into the overall investigative picture. In a case with this volume of public awareness and this level of reward incentive, the tip pool is one of the most important investigative resources available because it captures information from individuals who have direct knowledge or observations that investigators could not obtain through forensic analysis alone. The most likely form of the next major development in this case is one of four things. The first is an arrest, the point at which the converging evidence threads produce an identification confirmed by DNA, supported by the Walmart purchase records, and sufficient for federal charges. The second is a recovery, the location of Nancy Guthrie, whether alive or not, through the pacemaker signal detection effort, through a tip, or through the analytical work of the task force. The third is a public identification of a person of interest, a step that investigators take when they believe public awareness of a specific individual will generate additional tips, or when they have sufficient evidence to justify the public disclosure without compromising prosecution. The fourth is a significant forensic breakthrough, a DNA match, a Walmart purchase record identification, or a vehicle identification from the ring camera footage that transforms the investigative picture from building toward a suspect to identifying one. All four of these possibilities are active. All four are being worked toward simultaneously. The task force structure, the Phoenix operational base, the ongoing DNA analysis, the Walmart records review, the tip processing operation, all of these are moving simultaneously toward convergence. The sheriff knows the motive. The FBI is investigating the utility box. The cameras went dark at the critical moment. The DNA is being processed. And 42 days of investigation by hundreds of professionals are building toward the moment when the evidence is assembled, the identification is confirmed, and the person responsible for taking Nancy Guthrie from her home is held accountable for what they did. Stay subscribed to Case Decoded. Give this video a like, share it with anyone following this case, and contact 1-800-CALL-FBI or tips.fbi.gov. If you have any information at all, the reward is $1.2 million. It is real, it is available, and it is waiting for the person whose information makes the difference. Thank you for watching Case Decoded. We will be back the moment the next development breaks in the search for Nancy Guthrie. The investigative significance of the sheriff's public statement about motive extends beyond the case itself into what it reveals about how major federal investigations communicate with the public, and why the careful management of public information is itself an investigative tool. Sheriff Nanos has, throughout this investigation, demonstrated a specific approach to public communication that is worth examining in context. He has been willing to confirm specific investigative developments, the surveillance footage, the DNA evidence, the family clearance, the accomplice theory, while declining to elaborate on the conclusions that investigators have drawn from that evidence. This approach serves multiple purposes simultaneously. It maintains public engagement with the case, which is essential to generating tips and sustaining the community awareness that has already produced 1,500 new leads since the reward increase. A public that believes the investigation is active and progressing is more likely to submit tips and more likely to take the reward incentive seriously than a public that believes the investigation has stalled. It communicates confidence to the suspect, and this is a deliberate investigative choice. A sheriff who says publicly that he knows the motive, that the crime was targeted, and that the suspect could strike again is sending a message not just to the public, but to whoever is responsible for taking Nancy Guthrie. That message is, we understand what you did and why. We are coming for you. The psychological impact of that message on a suspect who has been following the public coverage of the investigation, and who almost certainly has been, is difficult to quantify but potentially significant. It manages the prosecutorial picture by communicating what investigators believe without disclosing the specific evidence that supports those beliefs. In federal prosecutions, the way evidence is introduced and the order in which it is presented matters enormously. Public disclosure of the specific evidentiary basis for the motive theory before charges are filed could create legal challenges that prosecutors are working to avoid, and it maintains the credibility of the investigation in the face of public scrutiny, including the scrutiny that has emerged around the sheriff's own background and the questions that have been raised about his resume. By making substantive public statements about the investigation's progress, by committing on the record to specific investigative conclusions, Nanos is demonstrating that the investigation is producing results regardless of the background questions that have been raised about his personal history. Subscribe to Case Decoded and give this video one final like. The complete picture of where the Nancy Guthrie investigation stands on day 42 is a picture of an investigation that has progressed further than the public record suggests, that knows more than it is saying, and that is building toward a conclusion that the sheriff's public statements are deliberately previewing without fully revealing. The motive is believed to be known. The crime is believed to have been targeted. The cameras went dark at the critical moment in a way that experienced investigators find odd. The utility box near the property showed signs of tampering that the FBI is examining independently of the local department's initial assessment. The DNA is complex, but being processed with the expectation that it will lead somewhere, and the person who planned, equipped, and executed the abduction of an 84-year-old woman from her home in the middle of the night is still out there, described by the sheriff as capable of striking again, believed by investigators to have had a specific reason for targeting Nancy Guthrie specifically. That reason, the motive that the sheriff will not reveal, is at the center of an investigation that will not stop until it produces accountability. 42 days in, hundreds of investigators, tens of thousands of tips, $1.2 million in rewards. and a sheriff who looked at the crime scene on February 1st and formed beliefs that 6 weeks of comprehensive investigation have only reinforced. The next development will break when the investigation is ready for it to break. And when it does, Case Decoded will be here to cover it with the depth, precision, and care that every development in this case deserves. Stay subscribed. Give this video a like, share it. And if you have information, any information, contact 1-800-CALL-FBI or tips.fbi.gov right now. Nancy Guthrie deserves to be found. Her family deserves answers. And the truth that the sheriff believes he already knows deserves to become the public record that holds the person responsible fully accountable. Thank you for watching. One final thread in this week's investigative picture deserves attention before we close. The question of the accomplice theory and how it intersects with everything else we know about this case. The Pima County Sheriff's Department spokesperson, Angelica Carrillo, confirmed in mid-February that investigators are looking into the possibility that the suspect had an accomplice. This confirmation has never been walked back or qualified. It remains an active investigative thread that is being pursued alongside the primary suspect identification effort. The accomplice theory intersects with the camera blackout in a specific way. If the operation involved two individuals, one responsible for the electronic disruption of the neighborhood's camera and internet infrastructure, and one who approached the property and carried out the abduction, it would explain the level of simultaneity that the timeline suggests. Disabling the utility box infrastructure while simultaneously approaching the property and defeating the doorbell camera is a lot of operational coordination for one person working alone. Two individuals with specific roles could execute that coordination more efficiently. The accomplice theory also intersects with the mixed DNA found at the crime scene. A mixed profile containing contributions from more than one individual would be consistent with the presence of two perpetrators at the scene. Two people whose biological material was deposited in the same location during the commission of the crime. And the accomplice theory intersects with the motive assessment in a way that is analytically significant. A crime that was targeted, selected for a specific reason, and that involved two individuals working together, suggests a level of shared motivation or shared interest between the two. Whether they are connected by a personal relationship, a financial arrangement, or a shared grievance with the target, the existence of an accomplice means that the motive is not the private knowledge of one person. It is shared between at least two. That shared knowledge is both a vulnerability and an investigative opportunity. One of the most common ways that multi-person criminal conspiracies unravel is through the decisions of one participant to cooperate with law enforcement, motivated by the prospect of reduced charges, by moral crisis, or by the weight of maintaining a secret over an extended period. The $1.2 million reward, available anonymously in cash, creates an additional incentive for anyone connected to this crime, including anyone in a supporting role, to come forward. The investigation knows this. The reward structure reflects this awareness. And the continued public appeals by Savannah Guthrie, "If you've been waiting and you haven't been sure, let this be your sign," are directed precisely at the person who may be on the edge of that decision. Stay subscribed to Case Decoded. Give this video a like, share it. Contact 1-800-CALL-FBI or tips.fbi.gov. And thank you as always for watching Case Decoded.